Hello folks, I hope that you're having just a great day today. Today we're going to add another writer to our canon of writers that I've been looking through. Today we're going to be taking a look at Leigh Bracket. She was a famous female writer during the pulp era who was mentored by C.L. Moore, another early female writer for Weird Tales, and her husband Henry Kuttner, who were both part of the Lovecraft circle. So she also was a part of that circle, people who of their later sort of correspondence, and she's writing during the pulp era too. She's a big writer in speculative fiction during the pulp era, and is a big name in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I've never actually read anything by Leigh Bracket until I read her short story that's in this collection, Lord of the Earthquake, which was published in 1941 for Science Fiction Magazine. So it was published in a science fiction magazine, although it's really more of an adventure. It does have some science fiction elements to it, but really it's really more of a sort of a classic pulp adventure, if you will. It's 34 pages in my collection. Now, this is the first short story I've had by Leigh Bracket. She is an author who's in my death queue, somebody who I wanted to read some stuff for before I died. I prefer the term death queue because it's just funnier than bucket list. It's bucket versus death and list versus queue. It just sounds funnier to say death queue. But she's definitely somebody that I wanted to read before I died. So I picked up this collection, which I'll link to you in the comments below. I've done a couple of stories out of this collection already, mainly for Wade Wellman. But then I also saw that it had a short story in there by Leigh Bracket and said, well, while I'm reading this collection from Wade Wellman, let me go ahead and read some of the other stuff that's in there too. I have reviewed some of the other stuff in there, including Wade Wellman and Frederick Cooner Jr. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to knock out Lord of the Earthquake, which I'm going to be giving a 7 out of 10 on. This is my second time trying to read it. It's got 6 chapters in it, a 35-page story. The first time I got 2 chapters into it, put it down, and then just got excited by other things, and that was about 7 months ago. And then you know how it is, you read things organically and sometimes you don't always finish what you started. But a couple days ago I sat down and said, I really want to finish this story. So I read it and knocked it out. Probably took me about an hour or 10 minutes to knock out the whole 34-page short story in my large collection. Typically it takes about 2 minutes a page to knock out. And I did so because I wanted to review it for the channel. I also wanted to read and finish my first Leigh Bracket short story. I'm glad that I did. 7 out of 10. It's a strong short story. Now, I had heard that Leigh Bracket, despite being a female writer, sometimes has a lot of the same issues of the trope of speculative fiction tropes during the pulp era. By that, what I mean is that a lot of the writing tends to take women and classify them by their sexuality. They're either pure, innocent virgins, or they're people who are sexually open, but they're evil and they're vile, and you should not go down that path. Those are really sort of the two sort of traditions. The classic, virgin whore dichotomy was made manifest during the pulp era. Almost all women during this era were in those sort of two, diagrams, and neither shall the twain meet. And you definitely aren't going to come across women that are not in one of those two tropes very often, although it does happen. And I talk about some counterexamples to that in a video I'll link to you below, where I go over those are two archetypes in more detail in the pulp era. But I'd always heard by fans of Leigh Bracket that she actually, not only did she play along with those tropes because she's a woman, but sometimes she would feel like she doubled down on them as well. So I definitely wanted to take a look and see Lord of the Earthquake, which is considered a rare story by Leigh Bracket fans, is in this collection. Now, this collection looks at stories by heroes set in Atlantis or in Lemuria, or from Atlanteans in the case of mainly the Wade Wellman series, who is focused on the last survivor of Atlantis after it falls. So we're going to be going over, and this one's going to be set in Lemuria, which is basically Atlantis in the Pacific Ocean. So we're going to open up our scene, our setting, with 2 people, 2 men that are in a sub, and they are scanning the bottom of the ocean for different ruins and aspects of the sunken and lost civilization that a lot of the main experts and scientists of the day have, kind of dismissed the research thereof. One of these people is an older person who's been around for a while, and the other one is a son of an archaeologist who was raised as an archaeologist, but he's not really an archaeologist anymore. And he is a very, very different person. He's more of just a sort of an adventurer, live in the moment kind of person. And his dad's friend, who he's adventuring with, does not like him very much at all. And there's a lot of tension between our two leads, if you will. Although we're going to mainly be following the main character of the one who's the son of the archaeologist, the one who's kind of living life just to live it and trying to make a name for himself rather than becoming an honest archaeologist like his dad was. So he's following along with his dad's best friend, and going for an adventure, looking for some of the lost remnants of Mu. They come across this lost in a pyramid under the water. There's a sort of a gate where there's some sort of a hole kind of going on. They fall through the hole, and they will arrive on the other side of the hole into Lemuria proper. And they will arrive at Lemuria proper, and they will leave. There is air to breathe. They leave behind the submarine and will start to explore the actual land of Lemuria. Now, in the second chapter, they'll start to explore. They come across some locals that are being attacked by some other locals. They decide, at first they're not going to get involved because it's not their kind of fight, if you will. But since one of the locals is an old man and some of his younger kids, it looks like there's definitely one side that's the bad side and one side that's the good side. And our man of who's the son and the primary protagonist of the short story is going to be somebody who pushes for a fight. They're captured, him and his friend, and they are taken along with some of the other people that were captured too. They're going to start to learn where they are, who they are, and that sort of thing. And at the end of the second chapter, you're going to learn the woman who they helped to rescue tells them, and one of their fellow prisoners tells them the year and the date that it is, and we find out that is the date according to the archaeologist. That this is the last day of Lemuria, and they have actually transported in time. So they've actually traveled in time to the ancient and to the last day of Lemuria, and now they are in a jail in Lemuria that's undergoing some earthquakes, and is apparently about to sink. And so that's the story. 2 chapters into a 6-chapter arc. So I'll go ahead and I'll leave you to it. Now, there was definitely a sort of a Leigh Bracket female notion. For example, the main character who we're following around is basically like, I have nothing to do with women. They don't concern me. They don't interest me. They're not my thing. I would never lower myself, but this woman's different, right? She's an action woman. She's a virgin. She's innocent. She's different. She's trope one, right? She needs to be rescued. She needs to be defended. She's virginal, right? She's definitely trope one of the 2 possible tropes that were popular during this time. You can definitely see that by Leigh Bracket here, and so this story would not feel out of place if you thought it was written by a man. So it just does not feel out of place. Now, I think, to be fair to Leigh Bracket, just because she's a woman doesn't mean she has a different point of view, right? I mean, let's be honest. Just because you're a woman doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to necessarily have a point of view, and I'm not going to give a woman a harder time because she didn't write women differently during this era than I would give a man, right, who didn't do the same thing. I'm not going to push too much. I wish she had, but I wish that all the writers during the pulp era did too, right? So I don't want to be exclusive or give her a hard time, or that sort of thing. But I do think it's interesting to know that there is a female writer who's writing females. And in speculative fiction, and she's just, and also maybe her editor said, this is what we're publishing, right? And so this is the tone of the time. This is the tenor of what had happened. So I'm not want to come down on Leigh Bracket too hard as a review thereof. And I am interested in kind of following along with her. I'm also kind of interested in finding out if there are Leigh Bracket fans out there. Have you read this short story? What did you think of it? Like, is it like one of your top 10 short stories, or is it one is it kind of like H.P. Lovecraft's my favorite writer, right? And I've read every single story that H.P. Lovecraft does, and some of them are amazing, and some of them, like The Dreams in the Witch House, really aren't. And so I would not be surprised if Leigh Bracket fans out there are like, Lord of the Earthquakes is kind of like the H.P. Lovecraft's The Dreams in the Witch House. It's okay. It's not great, but I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's well done, well written. I do think there are some pacing issues with it in a couple places. I think it's probably about 3 or 4 pages longer than it needs to be. and probably has a little bit too much of an easy solution to it, to the climax, but hey, it is what it is, and I definitely enjoy it. And there's a little bit of too much of a Deus Ex Machina in it, and it didn't make science fiction sense to me as a science fiction fan. But hey, that's just my opinion, right? Your views may vary, and I'd be more than happy to engage you with them in the comments below. So if you like that video, please feel encouraged to hit the subscribe button, because there's going to be so many more of these to follow out there. And finally, hey, I just want to thank you for spending some time and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, right? So the fact that you spent this time with me, wow, that's humbling, and I really appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.